Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Steve Seepersaw. I work here at Binghamton University as part of the marketing and communications team in partnership with the Alumni Association. And on behalf of the association, welcome to our Binghamton Learning Network webinar for today titled Life's Retirement Derailers. And this is part of a series we've done this week. We've looked at retirement planning and had programs on Tuesday and then yesterday looking at retirement planning for those who are just getting started, targeted at our most recent graduates. Then yesterday's session looked at those in the mid-career cycle, saving for retirement while taking care of kids, possibly also taking care of their parents at the same time. And today's session is for those who are in the time horizon closer to retirement age. The finish line of your career is within sight, and how can we best position you for success? And our presenter today is certainly well equipped to provide that information to us. If you have questions during the session, definitely send them to us. And I have my email up here on the screen. I'll be putting this graphic up and down at various times during the sessions today to the extent it doesn't cover up any of the visuals on the PowerPoint slide deck that you'll be seeing. But send these to sseepers@binghamton.edu. We'll take your questions during the hour, and then also at the end, we'll go right up to 1 o'clock Eastern this afternoon. If you are watching us on the Alumni Association Facebook page, type in your questions there as a comment, and we'll be seeing them as well. I'll be keeping an eye on that in my email throughout the hour. So fire away with those questions and we will get them answered. Before we move on to introducing our featured speaker, I'd like to bring in Owen Pell from the class of 1980. He is chair of the Binghamton University Foundation. He'll be sharing a few remarks briefly for us on video here about the work of the foundation and the importance of the generous support that they give to many areas of our campus.
Good afternoon. I'm Owen Pell, the chair of the Binghamton University Foundation. The foundation is Binghamton's fundraising arm. We help the university's development office raise money, watch over the university's endowment and investments, and work closely with President Stenger to support the mission of the university. Even though we are a modest endowment of about $165 million, every year we give millions of dollars to the university, including for things where state money has been cut or is not available. Every year, for example, we give the university several $million for additional scholarships so that Binghamton can compete with other elite private and public universities for the best students. The foundation also has given millions of dollars to support the university acquiring land in Johnson City for the new nursing school complex and the new School of Pharmacy. In addition to alumni, almost 1/3 of our foundation board is from the Binghamton community, people who love the university and what it brings to the Southern Tier. The foundation provides all of us with a way of engaging with the university and making a difference. For me, that has been about two big projects. About 15 years ago, I endowed an honors thesis program and a thesis prize for undergraduates in philosophy, politics, and law. More recently, with an anonymous donor I located, we established an institute for genocide and mass atrocity prevention, which makes Binghamton one of the few universities in the United States to offer a master's degree and a minor in this emerging and important interdisciplinary academic area. Like many Binghamton graduates, many current Binghamton students, and many members of the foundation board, I was the first person in my family to graduate college. I have always viewed Binghamton as the place that launched me in life and as a gift that keeps on giving. We are particularly excited this week to bring you webinars on retirement planning. Most exciting is that we are offering 3 webinars geared to alumni that are at the beginning, middle, or end of their career cycles. We hope these webinars are useful and that you not only enjoy them, but use them as a way to reconnect with Binghamton University. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope you will continue finding ways to support Binghamton University. Go Bearcats!
Owen, thank you very much for those remarks. And now we'll introduce Dana West from the class of 1998, who will be fulfilling several different roles here in this next hour. He is on the Alumni Association Board of Directors, serves as chair of our Lifelong Learning Committee. We'll be talking about lifelong learning initiatives that we offer to alumni. And he's also our featured speaker for today. Dana, thanks so much. It's great to have you.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thank you so much to you and the entire alumni staff. We're so glad to be able to put these things on. As Steve mentioned, I am the chair of the Lifelong Learning Committee on the Alumni Association. So what that means is that we're putting out programs like this. COVID and coronavirus have brought a few extra opportunities as those challenges have come our way, and being able to do videos, remote learning is just one of the things that has been a blessing to be able to provide to people that aren't maybe near the Westchester area, the city area, may not be able to go and see other alumni in person. So this is really our opportunity to be able to reach a lot more alumni that is really important to us. You may not have heard that we have a book club, been very popular. Please go check that out if you're into that kind of thing. We have a movie club, socially responsible movie club. We are looking to get our travel program back in gear, hopefully within the next year or two. And our cheer talks, if you haven't seen those, please go check those out on YouTube. We've had some really great programming on that. So that's my little commercial for the Lifelong Learning Committee for the Alumni Association. What I'm going to do is bring up our slide deck for today. We got a lot of material to get through. And while I do that, let me kind of share with you how I got here. 1998, for some of you on this webinar, might be making me one of the young guys here, but I assure you I've earned these gray hairs. 1998 seems like yesterday, but we're talking 23 years now, believe it or not. So let's bring this up. Let's hit the slideshow from the top. So why do we even talk about some of these planning concepts? I know we have a lot of late stage career alumni here on the call. I spent the earlier part of my career in wealth management, managing assets, pie charts, growing that money. And to be honest, that's kind of a really fun thing to do. That's what we're all really good at. Growing assets, talking about Tesla stock, where's Apple going to go, all that kind of fun stuff, which is growing and managing, and that's all fine and good for a period of time until we actually need to start distributing those monies. That's something we're really not good at. We really need to look at how long is that money going to last? What are our expenses going to be in retirement? What are some of the hurdles that we're going to be talking about today as far as what can kind of set us off track? Looking forward, retirement's a long haul. So if everybody retired on their birthday at age 65, which is never the case, but let's assume that it is, that's a long haul marathon from 65 to 95. Look back the last 30 years. Look how far you've come 30 years ago to today. So really my passion and what gets me out of bed in the morning now is to really help people to think about the things that maybe aren't as much fun, preparing for things that hopefully go right but might not, really taking a closer look at some of those harder to imagine circumstances that we might be in down the road, and really having a plan in place to distribute those assets over time. It's something that I have found that a lot of wealth managers, portfolio managers, financial advisors don't spend enough time doing. So that's really what keeps me going, and the ability for me to get out there and speak and share the knowledge of the years that I've picked up is really something that gives me great pleasure. So without any further ado, let's kind of hop in and talk about some big concepts. At the end, I'm going to share with you, my number one topic that I've had with my own personal planning clients. And let's take that from the top. So as you probably know, I work for Prudential. What we are in is a lot of the human nature business. So we're doing a lot of surveys. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? As far as optimism goes, this is something that I think opens eyes, myself included. So Prudential surveyed about 2,400 people in this particular survey, asked them to share important events that happened to them in the past, along with kind of their forecast, what might happen to them in the future. And if you can see on the left-hand side here, the past, not surprisingly, most people share a mix of good and bad. So 40% negative in the blue there. So thinking about health issues that you might have had, loss of a loved one, financial challenges, divorce, versus the good things. Hey, 60% positive, traveling, employment success, birth of a new family member, school successes, a new home, relationship successes. That's kind of where we put the mix of negative versus positive, which probably lines up with reality because it already happened. We can kind of compartmentalize the optimism and the things that might not have gone their way. Looking forward, though, looking at the future, things we don't know about, things we might want to predict, is a little bit more skewed. So you'll see in yellow there that 84% positive things people are expecting to have happen. So more employment success, relationship success, school success, traveling, birth, new home. A lot of the same things you'll see there on the left-hand side. We're also expecting all those things to go right. But also looking forward, we're really only looking at health issues, loss of a loved one to be a 16% negative. So if we're thinking that if we know where we've been, and that's a 40-60, why don't we have that same split going forward? And that's really where, I'm in the human nature business of helping and coaching people to think about the realities of what might happen. What I like to call is stress testing. Have we stress tested? If this happens, we hope that it doesn't, but if these things happen, what are our outcomes? Have we done enough to plan ahead for those things, knowing full well that we can't reduce 100% of our risk? We can't totally put ourselves on the right track because there's things we have control over and there's things we don't have control over. And we'll be going through a lot of those things today. But again, I encourage you to, if you have questions as we go, shoot them up to Steve. He'll be collecting questions as we go. I'll also leave some questions time at the end, but I like to keep it at a tight hour. And I assure you, I'm not going to try to cram 23 years of experience into the next 40 minutes. So, we'll keep on track, but we may be left with more questions than answers at the end, and we'll talk more about how to resolve some of those things as well. Moving forward, we're really going to focus on 5 derailers that can sabotage your retirement. Are all these things going to happen to you? I certainly hope not. Will one of these things happen to you? I certainly hope not. But really, again, stress testing. Have I thought about these things? If they happen, what's the plan? Do I have a plan? And really looking that far ahead is difficult for a lot of people. So let's start off at the top with number 1, healthcare costs. It's a problem. It's getting worse of a problem. So when we're thinking about high inflation issues, we're thinking about 2 things, which is education, which may not be an issue of yours anymore. The rising cost of college has been a problem exponentially over the last few decades. For you, the bigger problem might be what are my out-of-pocket medical expenses going to be for a retiring 65-year-old couple? Between inflation for education and retirement, for medical costs, those are the 2 biggies. So number 1, what's it actually going to be? So estimated out-of-pocket healthcare costs for retirement, for a 65-year-old couple today, not including any chronic illness care, long-term care, home care, none of that stuff. Just being healthy and living is going to cost you anywhere between $183,000 on the low side through about $400,000 on the high side, $363,000 on the high estimate. I got a couple trustworthy sources here. The Bureau of Labor Statistics put it about $285,000. Fidelity, they have more data than they know what to do with. They're at about $285,000 as well. But really, that's a huge number on paper. But when you really break it down, it's actually not that bad. So we're paying these things, but have we really planned ahead on what if it gets worse from here? So let's say $285,000. Let's say we're thinking about, another 30 years. So if we're looking at that $285,000, let's call it 300. We split it over 30 years. We're only looking at about 10 grand a year. So that is really where it seems like a large number, which it is. But have we set aside specific dollars because we know what it's going to be? It's probably not going to get any better than this. If you say, listen, let me just take the low end. Let me just take 183,000 and kind of wing it. At least you put aside enough money that you have monies coming in every single month to pay for things that you know exactly what they're going to be. If you want to be a little bit more pessimistic, look at the high end, look at 350, but somewhere in the middle, we're projecting about 250 to 300,000 of joint healthcare costs if you're healthy. And you say, well, that's an enormous amount. We've already broken it down to about 10,000 a year. Where do we come up with that? So we're talking about Medicare costs. We're talking about just going to the dentist, getting your eyes checked. These are all normal things for healthy people that are going to live to life expectancy or maybe a little bit beyond. And when you break it down like that, okay, well, that's a fair chunk of change. So for those of you that are saying, hey, listen, I feel wealthy with my 401k, have we backed out this kind of guaranteed number that we're going to have to address? All right, so these are the things that we think about. We already said, we're not talking about chronic illness. We're talking healthy. We're going to the doctor, and then on the tail end, just quietly go into the night. I think that's where we all hope to be. But what are the chances? It's kind of a dice roll here. 50-50 coin flip. Am I going to have some sort of chronic illness need? That is on top of all those numbers that I gave you. So, a good friend of mine, his dad has been in and out of hospital care. He's been bedridden for a couple of months, and he just exceeded his Medicare cap for physical rehabilitation, which is 100 days. So now he's got to go back home. He's still in bed, so he's obviously not caring for himself. You got some choices. Well, my friend has 2 siblings out on Long Island. Do they spend all their days 24/7 caring for their dad? It's an option, something that a lot of people do. How does that affect that generation? They're not able to go to work to the fullest. There's going to be potentially costs for them to care for their dad. So when I'm talking about a coin flip here, we're really thinking, between $5,000 and $10,000 a month, if we're not, going to have other means of care. So family is free to the extent of they're giving up their time and potentially their opportunities to care for you. I do have a client whose mom just passed. She was living in his living room for a couple of years. So these things happen, and really planning ahead for these things. Not the most fun conversation, but have these talks with family, with your kids. What do we do if? I hope that it doesn't happen, but what do we do if? And I hate to say it, but Thanksgiving is coming around the corner. I hope with today's ability to get out and travel more so than 2020. Listen, I call it the mashed potato conversation. It's really easy to talk about the mashed potatoes, but if you have the whole family in the same room and you have an opportunity to have a meaningful conversation, can you breach that topic, break out the wine? These are things that are really important to talk about. So number 2 is outliving your retirement savings. I want to live forever, and who doesn't? But are we really planning ahead for the number of years that we might be spending our nest egg? We've spent a number of years dumping money into a 401k, 403b, IRAs, other means of saving money for retirement. How long are we going to need to spend living to spend all that, right? So more individuals are going to be reaching ages 90 and older. And if I could do a hand raise on this, I know that I can't. I think most of us know somebody who has been in their 90s or is currently living in their 90s today. My grandmother made it to 92. My wife's grandmother made it to 93. These are things that are becoming a lot more common. Just the question of what is their quality of life at that point. My wife's grandmother had dementia, so I really didn't know who she was as a person. She passed a number of years ago. My grandmother had all her facilities and all her own original teeth, which was funny, but she had intermediate care, so she had an apartment, but if she needed help, that was the facility that she was living at. So the number of healthy people, 65-year-old today, that will live to 90, men about half, women about 3 in 5. Sorry, the ladies will probably outlive us in general, just statistically. And as far as to age 100, 1 in 14 men and 1 in 8 women. So this is a possibility. And the question isn't so much, how do I spend my money, but how have I plotted ahead, doing that drawdown process? Do I have a plan in place that if things go right, that I have enough money, and if things go wrong, that I have a couple of backup plans for that as well. The impact of unexpected expenses, though, so if we're looking in the color picture here of expected life, let's say that's 82, 84, 86, that's in general an average, and an average number is only as good as, the middle of the road. What if we have that longer life? What are some of the problems we might run into? So the retirement savings that we might need to last us for another 10 to 15 years, so if we're looking 85 to 100, it's possible. That's another 15 years that we have to make that money last. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Changes to the tax code. This is a biggie, and I'll cover this in more detail at the end as well. But as bad as things feel now, we're technically at a fairly low tax environment. So if you look back historically, taxes had been much higher, especially in the 1940s and the 1950s. And as bad as things feel now, tax code changes could make all these other sources of income be a bit of a problem. Inflation, as I said, just the general aspect of things getting a little bit more expensive every year. We try to estimate that around 2%. So, the cost of cars, the cost of groceries, the cost of baskets of goods just gets a little bit more expensive. And there are periods like we're living in today where gasoline just gets a lot more expensive out of nowhere, and groceries have been jumping up. So inflation is not a steady number as well, but on average, let's say it's about 2% more expensive every single year. Healthcare costs, I already said, out of control. Unless something drastic happens, that's potentially 5 to 7% more expensive every year. And caring for your parents, I believe Paul Tramontozzi on our session yesterday for middle career said you could be stuck caring for your parents as well as providing money for your kids. So that's what's known as the sandwich generation. And just like I said, my friend who's 53, his dad is 92. Lives in Putnam County. I'm in the burbs up here, and he has to drive out to Long Island every other day, which is 2 hours each way for him. So caring for your parents can be a burden both on your time and your energy and your mental abilities. And he's losing opportunities professionally in his highest earning years to have to care for his parents. So keep these things in mind. Low interest rates. Number 3, we're currently in a very low interest rate scenario now. We do not see on our end of the business major changes to that going much higher. So we really consider this to be the new normal. Treasuries at 10-year treasuries at a 1.6, a little bit lower. Where are we getting those safe monies from? It used to be, if you remember, even 10, 11 years ago, you could get a 4% CD without trying too hard. And now, saving money at the bank is a very difficult proposition to get anything back out of it. That's just where we're at. CDs, cash, savings, checking is a very, very difficult place to be right now. So the interest rate paradox is that what we really want is low interest rates now, but high interest rates post-retirement, because that's the money we think we're living on. Stuff it in the bank, get good bond interest, CD rates, checking, savings, just sit it out, get FDIC, get good quality, safe money coming in. And that we don't really feel is something that we lean on. Looking here, going back even to 2009, as I said, so that was roughly 12 years ago, 10-year treasury at a 385. If you sat on 100,000, you could expect 3,850 of safe money just kind of sitting on it. Treasuries were AAA at that time. The best absolute, almost guaranteed quality that you could really expect. That's the safety number, the 10-year treasury. Let's look back to 2014. All right, we're coming down to 2.17. Income goes down appropriately. As at the end of 2019, it's 192. And as I said, today it's about 1.6. So you're looking at about $1,600 for every 100,000 that you just want to sit on and expect that safe money. So what you're thinking is safety from 65 to whenever, but that 30-year haul will probably mean that you have to have some sort of equity position. What kind of risk are you taking on with that? Where am I getting my income from in a safe manner? Am I going to take on more risk than I really want? All these things are really important to analyze in taking a look now, taking a look on where we expect it to be down the road, and really having that communication, that plan with the the professionals around you, your banker, your wealth manager, your planner, your attorneys. What should I expect going forward, and what, if anything, should I be doing today to take care of these things? So looking at these low percentages can be offset by higher taxes, so that makes it even worse. Inflation makes it even worse. Medical cost inflation makes it even worse. And as I said, if we're looking at things just in general getting more expensive by 2% every year, and if you look on here, 1.92 even a couple years ago, down to 1.6, sitting in the bank getting a 1.6, setting in a treasury in this example, actually, you're actually losing money. So your buying power is going down against 2% estimate by 0.4. So you're actually losing 0.4 every year by sitting in safe money. So it's a really tough place to be. I'm not going to tell you that it's not. Challenge number 4, volatility in the market. We're all feeling fairly really good right now. But if anybody tells me that they were not a little bit nervous, last March and April, myself included, let's not forget. So we're looking at 2001. We're looking at 2007. We're looking at 2020. Really what I ask you to do when looking at a chart like this is a perfect chart to say, all right, how is I feeling at these certain points in time? So we look at the upside here, the 2001, we're all flying high on tech stocks. We look at 2007 before the housing crisis. We're all feeling great, but really what I want you to remember is how we felt on the way down. And the propensity is to, sell at the bottom. I can't take it anymore. This is terrible. I can't watch the news. I've already, thrown my TV out the window. I can't watch CNBC anymore. But really what you want to remember is the big picture, which is this. You look back in time, you put money in at almost any point in time, and it comes back, right? So having that communication with yourself, being honest with yourself, of knowing that the first rule of investing, I think we all know, is buy low, sell high. But as I said, I'm in the human nature business, so knowing what people really do is to say, listen, I can't do it anymore. I got to get out. And there are individuals that sold out at the bottom in any of these scenarios, waiting for the right time for them to feel good. And by the time they feel good, they would have either missed, 50, 70, 100%, or maybe just never got back in because they feel like they're waiting for the next go round. And by the time the next go round comes around, they're going to feel bad again. So having that honest conversation with yourself is a tough one, but just remember how you felt at the bottom and where we're at now. And if you can separate yourself from that and compartmentalize the feelings of failure and wanting to get out, just looking at this, remember this, and know that putting money into the market, volatility is going to happen, but when you take that 10,000, 20,000 foot view like we're looking at right here, it works. This is on average where you're going to get the most average return, which is, sitting in the S&P 8 to 9%. Is it 8 to 9% this year? Better than that. Is it 8 to 9% every year? We're going to have some down years at 30%. It happens. I like to tell people, don't get mad at February for being cold. So being involved and understanding what you can expect is going to separate yourself from the ability to make smart decisions, and to separate yourself from it is going to help you to really be able to move forward without making hopefully some bad decisions there. The other problem is this: the order of returns of what comes in and what goes out does not matter when we're growing. So I already talked about, we're really good about talking about hot stocks and making it grow and portfolio management. This is all the fun stuff, right? So, looking at these scenarios, you can use a factor on any of these, but we used $1,000. We're going to have some up years, up 10, up 25, up 10, up 23, and we're going to feel good about that, interspersed with just sitting it out with some down years, down 6, down 3, down 5, down 12, and in either scenario, whichever order we get, you'll notice that the percentages are exactly flipped. So whether you start with 1,000 in one direction or start with 1,000 in the other direction, you get the same exact returns because you sat on it. Up, down, or sideways, you're getting about 5.89% in this particular average return. This has nothing to do specifically with market returns, but it does make a difference when you're taking that income. So in scenario 1, same exact as it was in the previous slide, we're going to start taking some money out. So let's say in our example, this is $1 million investment. Let's say this is the first day of retirement. Let's say we're going to look at the next 25 years, and we're going to need about $65,000 worth of income in column 4. So start with $1 million, taking out some money, same amount every single year, because we've plotted that out. What effect, if any, are we going to have with market returns? So money's coming up, feeling pretty good. money is going down, it's okay. In this scenario on the left-hand side, we're still going to have 1.1 million after all that. That's not too bad. Pass it on to the kids. We'll talk about that in a second, all right? What if the opposite happens? Same exact thing on the previous slide, just the opposite order of return. So we're going to start with some losses on the front end. Our $1 million is going to get hit pretty hard in those first couple of years, and we're still taking money out every year. You'll note that we run out of money towards the end. So all things being equal, it really matters on when we start taking those incomes. That's something that we do and both do not have control over. Plotting those out, where are we going to take those monies from? Trying to mitigate some of the risk of the market being down when we need it the most to be up in those first couple of years is really going to impact how you set up that distribution schedule. And just winging it, as you can see, it all depends on, is luck going to be on your side? So what have you done to really put together a plan on market volatility? Here's the big one. As I said, I love talking about the things that people just do not want to talk about. Death and taxes does not make me popular at parties, but you can imagine that taxes and tax drag is going to be a huge component of how much you actually get to keep. And the biggest problem for everybody on this call is the old adage of maximize my deductions, stuff it into a 401k. If you're able to maximize those contributions by maximizing those tax write-offs, you have a fairly large sum of money that hasn't been taxed yet. So what I call that is the partnership with the U.S. government that you haven't really thought too hard about because they were giving you a good deal on the front end. So you've been working hard, saving money, getting those deductions, not paying the taxes. That felt good at that time. What's the problem now? So we may have large sums of money in that old pot of gold that we're going to owe taxes on at some point. And not doing something about it is the government's going to force your hand. If anybody's heard about the age of 72, used to be 70 and a half, at the age of 72, you're going to start owing some taxes. And that's going to come in the form of required minimum distributions or RMDs. So RMDs at age 72, if you haven't done any tax planning on it yet, you're going to have to start taking, based on your life expectancy, about 3.8% roughly in that first year. So at age 72, on that $1 million, you're going to have to take about $38,000. Okay, I can overcome that. If the market's going my way, that's not bad. I can make back 3.8%. What if the market's down, as I showed you previously? We're tumbling now. We're going to be really forcing our hand on paying the taxes because we've lost control on when we're going to do this, when we're going to dissolve that partnership with the U.S. government. So that's basically what we have here. For all that untaxed money is a partnership that we're going to be forced our hand in at a certain age if we don't do anything. So taxes is going to be a huge component on not only paying it, but when we're being forced to pay it. Every year, it gets to be a little bit more. So if you survive that 3.8% and you want to retain that principal amount, the next year it's about 3.9 and change, and then it's 4%. So as you head into your 80s and 90s, let's hope, you're starting to talk about 4 or 5%. We don't know where the market has been over that time, up or down or sideways. As I showed you, it does make a difference. But what we do know is it has to become higher and higher as withdrawals go every single year, percentage-wise, based on that December 31st previous close. So here's the problem. We don't have control. The government's telling us when we have to take it, and we do not know when it's going to be a good time to take it. We may have already given up that right to make those decisions based on that forcing of our hand with the RMDs. The other problem is such. We've already kicked the can down the road. We've already survived market volatility. We've already paid some of our taxes. Most people, are not taking a sufficient amount to enjoy retirement. So the worst thing that I see is that people are afraid for all these reasons in not taking enough money to live the retirement that they want. They're scared of taking too much money. They're scared of running out of money. There are ways to get around this, which we're not going to get into today, but really having that plan on all your needs being met, all of your wants being met, taking the kids on a cruise around the world if that's what you really want to do, buying that vacation home if that's something that you really want to do. But if you don't spend it all, now we have this other problem. So here's where we're getting to on taxes with the Secure Act. So if anybody I ask, comes up on, hey, I know a bit about the Secure Act, which was passed at the end of 2019. It was actually a holiday week at the end of 2019. So miracle number one, Congress actually passed something, and they passed actually what we determined to be the biggest change to the retirement landscape in the prior 8 years. So now we're talking about the last decade, the biggest change in the last decade. And what most people paid attention to was the R&D age change, which was 70 and a half, and now it's 72. And I say, I'm good. I know everything I need to know. That was not the big news. The big news is that they eliminated the stretch provision to the IRA. What that means is once you pass it to your spouse, that's fine. He or she will spend it over their lifetime, same life expectancy, RMD table. Once you pass it to the kids, it used to be now your kids or your grandkids, typically, right? We're now spending it over their lifetime. So younger age, smaller percentage, dragging it out, maybe from your kids being in their 40s to their 90s, just a little bit at a time. And it was not a huge problem. They were only paying a little bit of taxes on the little bit of money that they had to pull out. The problem is that Congress just killed that. So it's no longer your kid's lifetime. It's still good, spouse to spouse, that's fine. Pass it to each other. Once it goes down to the next generation or the next generation, now they have 10 years and not a single day more to pay taxes on the entire amount that you didn't pay taxes on yet. If it's $1 million, if it's $2 million, if it's $500,000, divide that by the number of kids you have, and that money has to be spread out over the 10 years, or they could take it all on day one, or they could take it all on the last day of that 10th year. But if they forget to take some or all of that, pay the taxes on it, there's a 50% penalty on top of the taxes for all the money that they forgot to take on that 10th year and a day. So what that means is it went from not being a great way to pass money along to a really terrible tax bomb to drop on our kids. So as I was saying on the front ends, the number one conversation that I've had with my clients over the last 3 years has been, how do I manage this partnership with the government? What can I do? There are ways to draw that down in a more predictable way, to spread out that taxes, not waiting to age 72. But as you know, at age 59 and a half, this is money that we can start taking out and playing with, so we can spread that tax risk out. What we can do is also, if we want to keep it in a 401k or an IRA, do Roth conversions. So as we know, Roth, we're going to pay the taxes on it now and then never have to pay the taxes on it again. That's good because we want that money to continue to grow. If there's nothing we can do about it, then there's nothing we can do about it. We at least accept that risk and know what that next generation is going to be subject to, so we can educate them and have those, mashed potato conversations with our kids around, hey, listen, I'm not going to be spending all this money down. Here's what you can expect as part of your inheritance. So your inheritance is going to be taxable to this extent, and here's what you should do for, putting some money on the side and saving for those taxes. These are not, again, easy conversations to have, but these are a lot of things that I find a lot of people have not really thought too hard about. Let's also
Dana,
talk about taxable income sources. Steve,
sorry to interrupt. Just a couple of questions before we move on much further in the presentation. One of them may be more of a comment than a question, and maybe sort of reading ahead. But is it now, like, looking at taxes is a matter of just awareness more than anything else? Because if you've picked tax deferred or not, at this stage you're kind of stuck with whatever you picked.
Well, stuck, no. I mean, I will say that historically that was probably the right move. And if you asked me even 10 years ago, hey, Roth contributions, regular contributions, it was kind of here or there. You could go either way with it. What has happened is the following. So the change to the tax landscape, taxes have actually come down, although it does not feel like it. We're all kind of scrambling for deductions because of limitations, at least here in New York, with state and local taxes, mortgage deductions, and those are going to sunset in a couple of years anyway. So what does the next tax generation look like? We feel that, as bad as things feel, they're actually historically fairly low. If you look back, the highest tax rate in the 50s was over 90%. Now, nobody paid 90%. There were so many deductions and ways to write things off that it probably came down to the roughly where we're at now with the highest paying tax bracket, high 40s, low 50s. But the problem is the way that it feels, which is, where the heck am I going to do it? I better maximize. So for those of you with ERISA plans, 401ks, 403bs, you say, listen, I got nothing else to do. I don't even have kids at home. I'm not getting a child deduction. I'm going to put my full catch up, which is 25,000, 26,000. And I want to take that because that's the only place I got deductions. What that is doing, in my opinion, is now compounding the problem down the road. Because number one, you're not going to spend it today. You're going to spend it over the next 30 years, 40 years. That $25,000 today could be $100,000 worth of taxable income to the government later. It's not going to, we don't want it to stay 25,000. So we're compounding the problem and really plotting ahead. One of our solutions, like I said, is to pay some of that tax money now. Although again, it's going to feel painful to do Roth conversions, either within plan or outside of your existing plan. It's easier to do if you're over the age of 59 and a half, because you can use some of the principal amount to pay the taxes. Otherwise, people are sitting on cash on the sidelines, and paying the taxes doesn't sound like a great way to spend money. But spending money on that money, that 401k now, and then never having to pay taxes on that money again, it's going to give you control because there's no RMDs on Roth. You can spend it down whenever you want. If the market's not having a great year, then do not take any money out of it. That's the choice that you can give yourself when you retain control. So there are ways of getting around it, structuring those monies, maybe doing some gifting. I got clients that like to give their 401k monies away to charities instead of taking those RMDs and paying the taxes on it. So there are exit strategies. Just thinking about it today versus winging it when you're 72 and a half, then you've really started to lose some of those options. I hope that helps.
That's definitely helpful. And one more question. Do you have any recommendations for safe money options for the next 5 years or so?
I think this actually goes in line with this slide. So Steve, if it's okay with you, I'm going to pick up on that question and address that on this slide here. So let's talk about safe and taxable. We already discussed treasuries being at 1.6. That's really a penalty to kind of sit on what is still considered to be the bellwether of the safest kind of guaranteed money. But at 1.6, how much of that asset do you really want to tuck into guaranteed and safe and sit around for 10 years at 1.6? Like I said, losing money against inflation. Let's talk about some of the taxabilities though. There's three buckets of taxability. So things that are always going to be taxable in any given year: your CDs, your stock accounts, your mutual funds, your bonds. Whenever that money comes in, typically, and those are going to be taxable bonds, by the way. Whenever that money comes in, you're going to get a 1099 in that particular year that you get it. You earn the money, you pay the money, checking and savings. That's all current now. Always has been, always will be. What about things later? So we talked about kicking the can down the road. What about my pension? When I start collecting on that, some of it's going to be taxable. My IRAs, that's pre-tax money, going to pay taxes at some point later. Annuities, a portion of it later. 401ks, 403bs, ERISA sponsored retirement plans. Social Security, for the most of us, will be taxable to some extent later. And as they try to figure out how to retain solvency in Social Security, I believe tax rates are going to be higher on Social Security too. But that's another story. What about maybe never? What about safe money that we can get, maybe never pay tax on it? So I spent most of my early career dealing with the high net worth and the ultra high net worth municipal bond holders. So we had people that could throw us $10 to $50 million personal money. We bought municipal bonds, laddered out, and municipal bonds, if you're not familiar, are debt obligations of municipalities. So bridges, tolls, tunnels, schools, these are all things that offer debt, which is a bond. And then they pay you, depending on where you live and depending on the type of bond, typically triple tax-free if it's important. So if you live in the New York City area, if you live in the 5 boroughs, then it would be important, potentially, to have city, state, and federally tax-free bonds, reducing that taxable income. Those are typically safe. As it currently stands, municipal bonds are still paying a little bit higher, I think, than they should be for what you get versus a equivalent in taxable bonds. So that's a good, safe place to be, but nothing's perfect, right? What's the offset? The offset is now you're sitting on money that is not necessarily liquid. You could sell them, but at what value? Sitting on bonds, could generate, the income that you need, but at what risk? The risk is liquidity, not getting that money back anytime soon. And then the risk of not being able to participate in higher risk areas if it becomes more important. So selling out of a bond portfolio to buy stocks, what is the timing of that and such? Likely never going to get taxed on life insurance death benefits. That, by the way, could be a way to offset your kid's tax bill on your untaxed money. So listen, if you're passing $1 million on to your kids, at least give them a life insurance death benefit of $300,000. Let them pay the taxes out of that. So that's one strategy there. Roth IRAs we talked about, 401ks, 403bs. They're Roth 401ks, Roth 403bs. I don't see any scenario where if they're in Roth, that you're not going to get grandfathered and ever have to pay taxes on the principal or the gains, which is great. And then HSAs, not a huge amount, but for those of you that have access to HSAs, fund them because you're not required to spend them down by the end of the year. It's a good tax-free way to pay for medical expenses. Looking at the back of these derailers, and I will, as promised, still leave some time for questions here. What are the things we need to think about? Going back to our earlier slides here, what are the chances of you becoming chronically ill? Flipping that coin, do you want to have money on the sidelines that is there? Maybe sitting at a very low interest rate to pay for, could be 10 to 15 grand a month for even home care. These things can add up. Listen, do I hope that we don't have that problem? Yes, but again, stress test what that likelihood is. Number two, how will you prevent a long life from becoming a financial burden? Guaranteed sources of income, pensions, things like that will, mitigate some of that risk of the money being spent in the earlier years and not having anything left at the end. If you go out to your mailbox or your email box and all the money you need to pay for your necessities, your home costs, your clothing, your food, groceries, utilities, if all that money is coming in every single month and you don't have to think about it, just imagine, the peace of mind that you'll have in not having to worry about where am I going to get the money from? Do I have to sell out in a down market? So plotting ahead and getting guaranteed sources of income to pay for the necessities are key to a happy life. How are you going to cover a gap resulting from low interest rates? I've seen it, and there's no one great answer. It could be, listen, I'm going to take on a little bit more risk than I want. I have to go out to the market. I want to be a bond holder, but I have to go buy some stocks. To that extent, a lot of people assume that at age 65, you're just going to sit down and just ride it out with bond and safe income. That has never truly really been the case. I think at any age, at any stage, at any decade, you should have a portion of your assets in equities due to the extent of we're looking for that average return, that 8 to 9%. The trick is knowing that you're not going to get 8% every single year. You have to give yourself the freedom and the control to take it only when you want it. So going back to, I don't know what year it's going to be and what that year is going to look like, giving yourself control over only taking the best sources of income on the years that you need it. So that's kind of a tricky strategy there, to have multiple sources and only pick the ones that are favorable to you in any given year. Number four, do you have a plan in place to protect you in case of a volatile market? Again, a lot of these strategies are ways of doing that, giving yourself back the control of not having to sell out in a down market. That's really kind of a key there in avoiding RMDs, because those are forcing you out in any given year. And then lastly, what are you going to do to address the impact of taxes? Again, there's no one right answer there, but at least understanding taxes now versus taxes later, and knowing that you have this partnership with the government. A lot of people have these untaxed pools of money. I know I'm going to have to pay the taxes at some time, or I know that my kids are going to have to pay it if I don't get around to it. What have I done to plot out that dissolvement of that partnership? That's just something that not a lot of people have thought about. We're not going to dig too deeply into insurance, but you know that whether it's home and auto, you can reduce your risk of loss by deciding how much of it you're willing to accept, deciding how much you want to sell off to an insurance company, and the self-absorbing risk is the part that you retain, and the part that you want to have somebody else take off is what's going to cost you money. That's where the premiums come in. You can cover your health, your accident, your critical illness, hospital indemnity, life insurance, disability, long-term care. There's a million different ways that insurance companies will help you mitigate some of your own personal risk. Some of it comes included with Medicare. So make sure you sign up for Medicare on your 65th birthday. We're actually, I think, knee-deep in Medicare enrollment right now. So make sure that if you haven't done that, that you put that on your calendar. But there's a million different ways of protecting yourself, but knowing that there's no way in any scenario to reduce your risk down to zero. So really analyzing what risk am I willing to take, what risk am I willing to sell off, and at what cost. That's where insurance may come in to benefit you as part of these plans. So as promised, I'm going to leave some time for questions, but just one thing before we wrap up at the end is that I want to make sure that you see what Steve put up on the site for our SurveyMonkey. Because I work for an organization and compliance needs to know how we're doing, it's very important that we hear your voice. So do take a minute to click on that at the end of the session before we close it. Is data too fast? Is he too slow? Is he providing good information? It'll also give you an opportunity, because I know we've really created a lot more questions than answers, and this is not the best way to answer it, one question at a time. I will, open myself and my doors to spending some time with any of you for free. That's kind of my commitment for being able to present today. Reach out to me. My contact info is at the bottom of the survey, and I'd be happy to schedule some one-on-one for a Zoom or a call, whatever you guys want to do to, see how some of these things might apply to your own personal lives. So Steve, I'm going to hand it to you for a second. Do we have any questions on tap?
Sounds good. And if you're watching on the microsite, scroll down a little bit past the viewer and you'll see the link to the survey. I'll throw that on the Facebook thread as well. So if you're watching there, you can take part in the survey. I know Dana definitely appreciates the feedback that you provide to him. We do have a couple of questions, so I get to one of them right here. Is the tax on the inherited IRA separate from the estate tax?
Yes. So this is actually not even it'll count towards your gross estate. So right now it's not a huge problem for most of us. If you're paying attention to where we're at on the the estate tax exclusion, if you are married, you each have about 11.5, so it's $11.7 million of exclusion, which is going to be, I think we can all agree that the number we'll never ever see again in any of our lifetimes. So big opportunities there for those people that have large assets, to do some gifting, to do some planning, to scale that number down while the getting is good. It will sunset, by the way, in 2025. So the last 4 presidents have changed their tune on where they want to see the estate tax. That's why we're at today from the last administration. But we can expect that almost every administration going forward is going to change it. But if nothing changes, it'll sunset, meaning go away in 2025. So 11.5 million, 11.7 million for each of you is about $23 million for a married couple, which does not affect too many people. Let's be fair and honest about that. So not a huge problem today, but what if it goes back down to 5, to 2, to 1? I don't think it's going to go quite down that low. Now we're talking about really managing that estate, doing gifting, creating trusts. But to answer your question about the IRA, that money is immediately inherited to your beneficiaries, probably your kids. That's just, on average, the way these things go. They won't pay estate tax on it unless we've already exceeded today, 23 million if both you and your spouse are gone. So that's not a huge worry today. But if it was, then that would be counted towards your gross estate. That might be a problem if we have a $2 million asset that's getting passed along and we're in a $2 million estate tax exclusion. So everything beyond that would be not only taxable, but at risk of paying estate taxes. So today, to answer your question, not a huge problem. Tomorrow, as we are doing estate tax planning, if we're starting to worry about the value of our home and the value of our assets, are we talking about gifting? Are we talking about getting money out of my estate ASAP because my exclusion is not going to cover all of that? And I hope that answers your question.
Okay, and one more question we have, and right now it's about 5 minutes of one, and we're happy to stay and even go a little bit past the hour if needed. So get those questions in. My email's at the bottom of the screen. I've been looking at that almost constantly during the show here. The next question, Dana, are Treasury inflation protected securities a safer investment than Treasuries?
Tips versus Treasuries. I mean, yeah, I mean, listen, you'll if we're talking about safety as far as me getting the income that I need, you'll get a little bit closer with inflation protection. So it'll be, higher over time. But really, we need to think about, what is the offset on, 1.6 on the Treasury. So is any of that money really sufficing any of your needs? To answer your question from a basic yes/no standpoint, I would say it's safer from a income standpoint, barely, but safer versus, you're almost guaranteed Treasuries, safety, no. So the real risk there is that, it's really a minor, squabble as far as safety goes. You're fairly pretty close, and I would feel confident owning in both. From a risk standpoint, Treasuries are, although they're not AAA anymore, are going to be really your safety guarantee instrument. Steve, what else we got?
I'm checking my email here as well as the Facebook comments. So doesn't look like anything else has come in. So are there any closing comments you would like to make before we wrap up? We've got just about a couple minutes here before the top of the hour.
Yeah, so closing comments, I'll say time and time again, how did I get into planning from wealth management? It's just all the missed opportunities that people had in converting, if ever, from fun money, let's grow it, let's analyze it, let's do the pie charts, to, well, what the heck am I doing with it? And the earlier we can think about, well, what the heck am I doing with it? It's either spending it, which is I hope why we save money to begin with, is to save and enjoy and live that retirement that we always wanted. But if we know for sure we're not going to do anything with it, now we're talking estate planning. How are we going to distribute that money safely? Have we thought about, some of these risks that we already talked about, from market volatility to taxes now, and when do we pay those things? So if nothing else, as it always comes back to, get that plan done now, get a clear understanding of how all these things might affect you. Because, like I said, I'm in the human nature business. We just don't do a lot of down the road thinking as much as we should. The fact is that we have a lot of caveman brain, which is, did I eat today? Am I eating tomorrow? Do I have shelter today? How am I looking tomorrow? And to be able to communicate with your 95-year-old self, if you have the innate ability to talk with that older person, say, hey, listen, did I make some good choices 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and what should I have done maybe differently, knowing now what you, as that 95-year-old self, might be thinking? If you can communicate with that older self and say, hey, listen, am I doing the right thing, and what should I be doing? That's really where getting that understanding of where you're at today and where you're looking to go hopefully gets you a little bit closer to understanding that older self that we will eventually become, whether we like it or not. So with that, let me just thank everybody for joining us. Please, again, your feedback is essential. And if you want to talk about any of these things one-on-one, my door is open, free of charge, to talk about these things. It would be my pleasure to expand and see how this might apply to your own circumstances. My pleasure to be able to do that. But until then, I'm going to pass this back to Steve to wrap up. And Steve, thanks again to you and your team.
Well, Dana, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your support of the university and the Alumni Association, and how passionate you are about sharing your knowledge with others and wanting to help other alumni. So I definitely would echo what Dana just said. Take time to share the feedback because that helps to tweak future presentations, but also then you can get the contact information. And if you want to have a call or some type of session with Dana to begin to dive into some of the topics that are front of mind for you, definitely take advantage of that opportunity. Dana, thank you again very much. It was a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
So just to give a brief commercial, we have two webinars coming up that we are working on for November. One of them is coming up on Wednesday, the 10th, looking at business body language of all things. So are you sending the right signals? And it's more than what just you're saying verbally, but things about your appearance could be sending a message. Maybe it's an opposite message from what you want to send. So we dive into that on Wednesday, November 10th. The following Wednesday, we'll have a session about home buying 101. We have an alumni realtor from the Boston area who will be joining us. And so if you're looking at purchasing your first home, whether you're already looking at some properties or you know that's something that you're going to be looking at in the near future, you definitely want to be here for that session. Both of those are in the noon hour Eastern time, and we'll be sending out information about that by email. Also, if you go to the alumni website, binghamton.edu/alumni, in the events calendar under the section titled Connect, you'll see the event and program calendar, and there are links there with information about the webinars coming up, and you can get yourself signed up. So have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next time.